on my laptop. Let me just hold on a second.
Hey, Bob, while you do that, we're actually going live here. So
okay,
you do your thing on the laptop. I'm just gonna. Oh, and we lost Bob.
And then there were three.
That's okay.
The band played on.
That's right.
Exactly.
Three bassists walk into a bar. What's the next joke?
We can do this as a trio.
That's right.
So
just bring your bow.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, Bob's back. Cool. Hey, everybody, welcome to SVT Time Live again. This is episode 20, but this is a very
whoa.
This is a very special. So this is dedicated to. We're not so much going to talk about gear. We're talking about, this is in honor of Record Store Day. And for those of you that aren't familiar with Record Store Day, it's 2 dates throughout the year that are geared towards the independent record store owner. So what better way to celebrate Record Store Day than to have some iconic bass players that are probably between Bob, Jerry, and Hutch. You guys have probably played on, and I'm taking a stab here, at least 50% of the hit records that are out there. And I'm shooting low.
We got a little monopoly going on here.
I'm gonna say
you're definitely going low.
Am I shooting high, Bob?
Yeah, I think you're shooting high.
Of course, I know there's so many other iconic players out there, guys. But just to give you an idea, Bob, I was looking at your discography online, dude. It was like 118 pages long. So,
yeah,
Jerry, yours was pretty long too, man. Yours was like a few, It was up in the.
What can I tell you, man? You get what you deserve, baby. And he deserved every one of those 118 pages. He deserved it. Believe me.
I think it's more like 18, not 118. but whatever. I'll take. For years, we wasn't getting credit for making records. They didn't start putting our names on records until like when I came into business in '65. They hadn't put names on records except jazz albums. That was it. Yeah. That was it. I didn't see your name on a record.
You'd be surprised how much work you've done.
I didn't see your name on a record, Jerry, probably till 1970, maybe. Does that sound about right?
Wow. They started in 68 they started. 68.
Yeah. Hey, man, give me a half.
So you made records a lot of time before that.
Well, since we're talking about Record Store Day, give me a half a teacup of bass. I was going to buy him on records and devouring everything he played on with the King Curtis and the Kingpins and Aretha and all the stuff I could get my hands on that Jerry played on, and Chuck Rainey. They kind of played on a lot of similar stuff, in the beginning years, right? Am I wrong about that, Jerry?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Back in those, you're talking. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say I was shopping for records at a time. I was buying records in the 50s when I was, sharing a bedroom with my older brother. We would go to record stores. But once I started playing and playing in bands and stuff, and by the late 60s, very early 70s, I was buying a lot of records because of who played on them. And Jerry, you were one of those guys, and you remain to be one of those guys, and you'll always be that guy. Just want to give you a shout out.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome.
All right.
Hey, Bob,
thank you. Appreciate it.
What were some of the local music stores in your area that you were shopping at?
Go ahead, Jerry.
Oh, No, I was asking Bob. I was just
For
saying,
myself, Bob.
both of
Yeah,
you guys.
yeah, Bob.
Okay. Where were some of the places I shopped at for records?
Yeah.
Well, one of them was the local supermarket. It was called Thrifty Mart. Every day's a special day at Thrifty Mart. That was the jingle.
Nice.
They had a record bin, and that was only like 3 blocks from the house I grew up in.
Wow.
In Mar Vista.
Whoa, what city was that?
Mar Vista, California, right near Venice. So the market had a couple bins of records. We bought records there, and then there was another place called Rancho Park Records. When I was a little older and could get on the bus to go there, because it was a bus right away in Westwood. Hey, there's Hutchinson. He's late too. I would go to Rancho Park Records, Dino, where the record clerk, a young nerdy record clerk with a lot of pens in his pockets and stuff, was Bob Haidt. I don't know if you remember who Bob Haidt was. He later went on to become the lead singer in Canned Heat. And he knew everything about every R&B and blues and pop and rock and roll record. So those were the two. And then when we really got adventurous, we took 2 buses, maybe 3, to Wallach's Music City, which was Wallach's Music City was at Hollywood and Vine for probably I think it opened in 1940. Wow. I think it was open till the early 70s. And you could go in there and get a little pile of records and go into your own booth, a glass booth with a big set of headphones.
No way.
And go listen to any record. So those were the places. Wow. And then there was a couple neighborhood record stores when I was quite young, but those were the main 3.
Wow. That's so cool.
Man.
Hi, Hutch.
That is something. That's California for you. You can get anything in the supermarket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wish I had that now at my Ralph's.
Yeah.
Go pick up a record at Ralph's.
That'd be nice.
Right. Yeah, that'd be cool. When they tried to do that with Starbucks, they were doing something like that.
That's right.
Yeah,
it was just their brand.
Yeah, they were doing the CDs, Starbucks brand CDs.
Yeah. Jerry, what was your first experience with record stores?
Well, not many, to tell you the truth. It was most of the radio for me.
Okay.
And I bought a few albums, actually. They were mostly jazz albums. I would go to 125th Street and shop down there. I can remember. But see, I was gifted with on my 10th birthday. I was gifted with a tape recorder as opposed to a bass because I wanted to play the bass. But I was too young. I couldn't wait till my mother could afford it, so she gave me a tape recorder instead. And I started taping everything off the radio. So I was bootlegging making my own stuff. And it's funny. I would make these tapes, and very rarely would I listen to them. And it just takes so time consuming to listen to them. I'd rather play. So I record them, but I actually spent more time playing from the first listen as opposed to going back to listening to them over and over, or so-called drop the needle. I really wasn't into that because I couldn't understand what they were playing anyway. I just enjoy listening to it. But the fun thing about records is the album covers. That was the most provocative things I remember about the albums themselves. I mean, the album artwork was off the hook. I mean, that was the main draw for a lot of people just even buy an album, let alone the people. But like Bob and myself, when I did buy records, it was based upon what Morfigo or Simply Sid would say, who was playing on the record. I go out and buy their records, and I look for. I'd go out and buy a particular record. It wasn't so much browsing, to see what they had. Mm-hmm. So I have a very, as I say, a narrow experience where Bob was like he was all over the places, and I've heard about people taking buses and trains to go to the record store. So now I got living proof of somebody else I know, a musician who's done it. It's great, man. It's great, especially when you look up to see the artists who make the record, and you get into your life, and see what's going on with them and why you're attracted to their music. It's really you got in a rabbit hole, just based upon an album cover.
Yeah.
Ben Hutch, what's going on with you, man?
Hey, hold on, man.
Hi, Hutch.
This is really loud. Hold on a sec.
Yeah, if you're using in-ears, it gets crazy loud.
Oh, it does?
Cool it down.
Hold on.
We'll talk really soft.
Are we on here? Am I lit at the table?
We know how to do that.
What's that? I got it. I'm here.
You're here. Okay.
I'm here, I believe. It's early here. What can I say?
Yeah, that's right too. What time is it there, Hutch?
It's just after 8 a.m. Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Bob. How you doing?
Great. How are you?
Been meaning to call you.
Well,
What a.m.?
We'll do that. No.
Where are you?
I'm on Maui. I'm in Hawaii, Jerry.
You.
Yeah, he's in Hawaii.
You're Maui. I thought it sounds like it. Okay, good for you. Older than dirt.
I'm getting
That's great.
and plenty of it here.
Yeah. Now, I just want to preface, Bob. I understand you have to split pretty early here too, right?
I do. I'm going to a rehearsal.
Okay.
We're just started rehearsing with Jackson.
Yeah.
To go on a tour. And speaking of records, we're learning a new record that he's putting out. I think it's coming out later this month.
Awesome.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Mm.
All right. Is it going
Nice.
will it actually be on vinyl or is it?
I think it's in all formats. I received a CD at rehearsal yesterday that I promptly downloaded onto my iTunes library.
Okay.
So I don't have to access it via, a code to get into a secret code because it's not out yet.
Yeah.
So, it's coming out on all the formats, all the digital formats, I'm sure.
Right.
Okay.
And vinyl and CD.
Man, vinyl, it's funny. How do you guys
Nice.
feel like vinyl's starting to make a resurgence, obviously?
Yeah.
Well, I never got rid of mine. I don't play it that often, but I went shopping last weekend for a new old. I'm kind of friendly with a guy who his friend rehabs old hi-fi gear from the 60s and 70s. Nice. And I have an old system, but I'm looking for something a little smaller. There's a few companies like Philips and Marantz, and they made these little tiny units that'll fit snugly on a shelf. So anyway, I went and shopped. So I'm still really into all the, into vinyl, even though I don't spin it a lot, but I like to have it in case I want to.
Yeah, I feel the same way.
I mostly listen to music, on my iTunes library and, YouTube and whatever.
Yeah.
And, Spotify and Apple. Well, not Spotify so much, Apple Music.
For me now, the vinyl purchases are as much about
shaking his head.
It's as much about getting that artwork, like Jerry was saying, and like feeling like you're connected to the artist and just digging through that. I really miss that in releases. And
it's also the credits. It's not just the artwork. I mean, when we were kids, we used to buy records from certain labels like Chess or Stax or these other labels,
especially
or by certain producers or like, I'd buy anything that had Paul Chambers on it when I was really young. I mean, he was like my hero when I was a little teenager, early, even preteen. And it was like anything. I'd just buy any record that he was on.
Too.
And, really? I didn't know that. That's amazing. Yeah. And so therefore I think kids today or music fans in general don't have those opportunities to find out who's doing what on a regular basis in a certain place.
Unless they're buying vinyl.
Unless they're buying vinyl, or or unless they do a lot of research, like we had to do when we were young musicians to find out who was doing this. But back then, you could buy the record, see who did the artwork, see who played bass, see who played whatever.
But but I'm always surprised by how many young musicians really have gone and studied and know, and somehow on the internet found all that shit and know everything and way more than I ever did. And
but the difference is they're like us though to a certain extent. I think that the general listener doesn't have the opportunity to sort of pick up a record or whatever and see it, because a lot of the CDs I know that I'm on, it just sort of gives a general frame of musicians, and it doesn't necessarily list. It depends on really how you get paid. It doesn't really list who's playing what on what track or this or that. It just lists 3 bass players or
right.
And Bob and I are on a lot of those records together. So sometimes like, did I
true.
play on that track or was that Bob or was that, you know, I mean, it's like, you know, sometimes you go, I sort of remember this track, you know, but is it really the right one? Whereas back in the day, you could go and see who played specifically on what and what they played and how they, and sometimes even the instrument you played, you know. So it was a lot more informative, and I think that helped everybody.
That day came. We were talking about that before you joined in. That day came pretty late because no one knew who James Jamerson was.
Right.
Till much later on because he didn't get. No one got a credit on those records.
Certain labels, of course, like Motown, were specifically like that. But if you bought a Chess record, you can see who was pretty much playing on out of the albums. I mean, like once those real folk blues records started coming out and all of that in 64, 65, right around there, you could really see it. Prior to that, and certain labels never gave the musicians due credit. And that's why I think a lot of the Motown records, there's still a lot of controversy as far as who played on what and when they played on it, because they would cut multiple versions of each song. So I think that would that also came into play. Hey, what time is it? Was I like late? I'm never late.
You were late.
It's funny you
we
were
won't dock you any pay.
You were just behind the beat, just the hair. You were really sitting in the pocket.
I'm calling the local to let them know.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's a time difference. Sometimes it's 3 hours difference here. Sometimes it's 2 hours difference. So I'm like going, oh, they're already on screen. I wonder if this is a long run through or something.
Well, you know what's funny, Hutch? I mean, I logged in. I usually log in about 15, 20 minutes early, and your camera was live.
Oh.
So, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, that's because I went to the site and turned it on, although there was no one here, as is generally the case.
Hey, I got a question for each of you, and I'll start with Jerry. We'll go to Bob and then Hutch. But this is a question that I don't even know if there's an answer. That
he was ready.
This or not, but what, in your mind, out of all the stuff you guys have played on, what would be?
You know the drill.
I guess what would be the most memorable recording, or when you finally get the record, you were like, wow, this is me playing bass on this thing. Like, just if for anything, just so that whoever's watching can go out and research.
I'm a bass player. I'll come up with an answer.
Go, Jerry, you first.
You got the floor, Jerry.
You get the floor, Jerry. Oh, can you hear us? Jerry, can you hear me?
He is a bass player.
Maybe not. He might not be hearing us.
Nothing? Uh-oh.
All right. How about you?
Well, for me, it's
Oh, there we go.
it's funny. I had an experience in 1971. Okay. I was trying to rent a car. Am I on? Yeah, I'm on.
Yeah.
I can hear you.
Okay.
Oh, I think it's just got a big delay.
I was in the process of. I hear you. It says I'm in the show. Everybody can see and hear me.
Yep. Yes.
Yeah,
You can't hear me?
I can hear you.
I didn't do anything.
No, we hear you fine.
It's the World Wide Web.
Hello?
yeah.
Come on,
No, maybe I did do something.
Well, we hear you.
Yeah, we hear you.
I don't hear anything. Yeah, now I hear something. Okay. Yeah, there's a big delay because I said I was a bass player about 3 bars ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
We don't use delay.
No.
Well,
Occasionally.
so I can tell you what my story.
Yeah, man.
Yep.
Can you hear my story? Okay. I was renting a car from some Sunshine Rental. Okay. And once I gave my name, the rental agent, after giving my name, he said, Gerald Jemmott? He said, Gerald Jemmott? You do? Okay, so did the guy, rental agent. He followed it with, King Curtis live at the Fillmore West? I said, yeah. He said, come on down and get your car.
Like
that was my first experience with a record bringing me notoriety, so to speak, because before that I was just a studio musician and didn't think about, what I did and the recognition. But they actually was recognized by somebody, a rental car agent, knew exactly who I was when I was going to rent the car. So that was just my first wake-up call to like the significance of having names on records and seeing the whole deal play out from that point on. That was my first experience.
Okay. All right. That's cool.
That's
Bob,
amazing.
how about you, sir?
Well, God, there's so many moments over so many
I haven't had
years.
any since.
It's hard to pick out one, but if I were to pick out one.
Okay, we had 21 minutes and 8 seconds and nobody's talking. We got freeze frame.
It would be 1973 A&M Records.
Oh, now Bob has left. He said he had to leave.
I don't hear the.
Yeah, I think Jerry's like.
The host has
20 seconds
unmuted
behind.
your mic. Okay.
Okay,
My
I hear
mic
you,
was
Jerry.
not. Okay, you're on the show again.
You hear me?
Yeah.
All I get is freeze frame, and everybody's like, I see Hutch. Oh, Bob is back.
Yeah, I'm back. Anyway, I was going to say
We got a little San
1973,
Fukushima here.
A&M Records, John Lennon session, Phil Spector
Oh, yeah.
producing, 26 guys on the bandstand, kind of a circus, kind of a 3-ring circus, and that's pretty memorable, even though I was quite young. So I'll just leave it at that one.
Wow. How long ago was that, Bob? 1970.
48 years ago, I would say.
Okay.
I'm
Man.
old.
No, we're all old. We're all old. I just colored
Hey,
it.
is that Dominic, by the way, in the middle?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hi, Dominic. I need
How
to
you doing,
talk on a totally unrelated record store basis. I need to call you and talk to you.
Cool.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
Nice to meet you.
Hey, Bob,
I just realized that's you.
Yeah, no worries.
So listen, I've got to cut out in about
Oh,
5 minutes. Drive out to Burbank, close to Burbank anyway. And any more
I'm not
questions?
saying a thing. What you're hearing, I said 30 seconds ago.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I was late, Bob.
It's okay. You weren't that late. You didn't miss much. I was late too because I was having technical difficulties as well.
By the way, that's not a Dodgers hat, is it?
No, I have one exactly like a
Oh, yeah.
Dodgers hat. This has no
Oh, yeah.
logo on it.
Just
Oh,
in
yeah.
case you'd worn a Dodgers hat, I brought this actually. Just,
Okay.
I knew you might have. It's like and this
Yeah.
is really for Dino.
Yeah.
actually.
Look at him. He's
'Cause-
scrambling.
we'll see you in October.
I don't have my baseball cap, but I do have my little ice cream cup.
Oh, God.
I'm guessing.
You're
we're gonna
older.
see I'm guessing we're going to see neither of them in October. Maybe in the playoffs.
Wow, we went totally from record store days to Nesson.
Yeah. Anyway, listen,
we're trying to get comps.
I
Go ahead.
spent so much time in record stores as a kid, and even probably into my 30s and 40s. It kind of petered out after a while. I used to have a jukebox in my living room that one of my daughters now has. I was filling that with 45s and, buying blues 45s. We'd go to obscure record stores on the road. The same way we go to vintage guitar stores now for the last 20 years. We went to record stores. And so it was a constant quest to find that one cool, 1957 record from Cuba or some, Cachao record, obscure stuff. So it's been a constant kind of a quest my whole life, ever since I was 5 years old, because my brother was almost 4.5 years older than me. So I would tag along with him to buy records when I was 4 or 5 years old. So it's been a constant quest, and it's kind of fun getting back into it now, to buying a little vinyl record stores. So I'm just going to leave it with that. I love records. I got to go.
Bob, thank you.
Say hi to the guys for me, Bob.
I will. I'll talk to you soon, Hutch. Dino,
okay,
you too.
Bob. Good seeing you for a minute.
You too. Hey, Jerry, you still up near Westchester, Baldwin Hills?
He'll answer in about 20 minutes.
Okay. All right, later. When you find out, let me know. Dino, talk to you soon. Sorry, I got to split.
No worries.
Okay, bye.
Bye, Bob.
I see you guys. Thanks for inviting me. Bye.
Okay. See ya. Here we are.
Yeah. Hutch, what was your come to life moment, like the record that you played on?
God, there were a bunch. I think for all of us. I mean, always the first things you did, I think, were pretty phenomenal. Just the fact that you could hear yourself on the radio or wherever, and that people, like in Jerry was talking about how you were recognized for that.
All right, Bob.
I mean, we
got to get together one day. We sent you out here. I'm out here. We're at Maui, so let's hook up. Dino got the connection.
Are you in LA still?
And then you got the records.
Boy, there's some delay here. I'll tell you.
Yeah.
You guys, who can hear me right now?
All right, have a good session.
Okay.
Hey.
All right, there we go.
A killer delay.
Where are we? Am I moving?
I think behind the scenes we're trying to reset Jerry.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, there you go.
Yeah, I think Aaron's trying to reset him. So good.
I think a lot of the stuff when I was a teenager I did in the Bay Area, some of the stuff with Malo and John Cipollina and Mickey Hart and Mike Bloomfield, and I do tracks with different cats up there, and it was just there were people that Link Ray I worked with back then in the early 70s. The first time I heard myself on record with Link, and even just to be able to work in the studio with these people whose records I've been buying while I was in high school a couple of years earlier. I mean, that was for me an amazing thing that I was working in the studio. When I was about 10 years old with a friend of mine who still owns a studio in Terre Haute, Indiana, we started hooking together. I really wanted to make records more than just play. Even when I was in school, when I was going to Berkeley, when I was in high school, I stressed that to my teachers. I mean, that I wanted to make records. Records were a legacy. They were a painting. There's something that was left that people could appreciate for decades. Mm-hmm. And I think that really affected me. And every time you did another take, it was a different stroke of that paintbrush. It was a different feel. It was a different vibe. You couldn't try and recreate what you'd just done. There was no point in that. You wanted to advance it or further it in some way. And so for me, that was what was interesting. And also that you were leaving a document, you're leaving a legacy, and that people were able to appreciate. When you do a gig, it's there, it's gone, it's into the ether. The notes you play, people don't reflect on it so much, and they it doesn't become a part of their lives. When you make a record, people live with it and they listen to it over and over again, hopefully. And if they like it. And luckily enough, I think all of us have been on a number of records that people have influenced people's lives in that way. I think Bonnie's record still, I mean, I'm shocked when people on social media, they'll say, oh, this record came out 40 or 50 years today. An Etta James record I did in 1983, or a BB record, which Jerry and I both had the pleasure of working with BB, and it's always a thrill, I think, to be around people that you respected when you were growing up, and to gain their respect as a musician. I mean, that's such a big deal for me. And I think we've all been blessed in that way. So we've been able to be in that situation multiple times during our careers. But every now and then, I mean, there were people I hadn't worked with that I'd wanted to, like Joe Cocker, who I worked with numerous times, that I'd always respected. And when I did finally end up working with them, it was a big thrill. And when you see that record come out and you're able to listen to it or hear it on the radio, or and we were talking about Paul Chambers. There's a Bed Bath & Beyond in Studio City, California, back in the late 50s, early 60s, as I said, Paul was on, when I heard Kinda Blue and when I heard In a Silent Way and these Miles records, it blew my mind. So I would go research and find out what other records he was on and find his solo stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I was buying a coffee maker in Studio City, California at Bed Bath & Beyond. And there's this kid helping me find the right coffee maker. So, he's a good kid, probably late 20s, 30 years old. Kenny Aronoff, the drummer, who I worked with a lot over the years, who's also from Massachusetts, he comes in, hey, Hutch, starts giving me crap. Kenny's sort of, hey, man, what's up, And the kid starts watching us, and we're talking about a session we just done, and it was probably 25 years ago. And so Kenny does his thing, what he needed to do, and I'm still talking to the kid about coffee machines. The kid says, "You a musician?" I go, "Yeah." He says, "Oh, my dad was a musician." I said, "Oh, what'd he play?" He said, "He played bass." I said, "Oh, would I know him?" And he said, "I don't know. His name was Paul Chambers."
No way.
And I went, "Oh my God, your dad was my hero when I was a kid. When I was a young musician coming up, your dad was on everything. He was
That's beautiful.
West Coast, East Coast. Dig this though." I said, I think I had every record that your dad ever played on. And he goes, "I never really knew my dad." He said, "My mom raised me. My dad died when I was very young. And I don't think they got along very well." And I could tell he didn't have the music gene so much. It felt like that. He was more analytical. And I said, "You need to go out and find some of the music that your dad played on and listen to it and reflect, because he was such an influence on so many of the musicians today that you listen to, whether they're aware of it or not, because he influenced people like Jerry and myself and other people who go on to influence a lot of younger musicians. And that's how this whole thing works. And that's why records are so important. Vinyl records were even more important. I think having physical product, now everything's streamed. It's through the ether. No credits. If you want to research the credits, you need to go to AllMusic or one of these other sites. But back then, even CDs, cassettes, whatever. Cassettes were hard to read, but they still had the credits on there.
Yeah.
But that was so important to the development of younger musicians and music in general, because it gave people access to who the creators, to who created this stuff, from the artwork to the mastering to the whatever else, to all of the facets. That it's like basically credits in a film. You watch a film, I usually sit through the end title credits, because actually we're on some of the tracks, so you always want to hear what's happening. So the credits are rolling, you're going, oh gee, I didn't remember playing that note. And it's but it's somebody else. I remember I was watching something in the theater, and I heard this keyboard come in, and I knew it was Bruce Hornsby, and then then all of a sudden I heard Shaka singing, Shaka Khan.
Okay.
Wow, that's a wild combination. And they'd written this, I can't remember the film, but look it up. It's a beautiful ballad with just he playing piano and her singing. I think it's called Say You Will, maybe. And anyway, but I had to sit through the whole end credit just to hear that song, and I think, and a lot of times I'll hear a song in the film and sit through the end credit of the movie just to see who played on it or who wrote it or who produced it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's what you get from records and CDs. That's what you get from having a physical product. Because, and the other thing about streaming, I'm getting like religious here. I'm going to church with this one. So it's like, but the thing is that the other thing you get from a product, a physical product, is that aside from access to the talent that created it, you get it. There are a lot of tunes. Well, now with streaming services or reissues or compilations, there are 60% of these records that were made back in the day aren't available. I mean, 60% of the work, 60% of the songs, maybe my favorite song is not going to be available on a streaming service. Right. Generally, as musicians, we don't like a lot of the hits sometimes. We may like them, but they aren't our favorite tunes. A lot of that stuff is lost. It's in a vault somewhere. and it wasn't released, and it's not available on Apple Music, or it's not available on Spotify, and it's definitely not available on a lot of greatest hits compilations or whatever like that. If you have the individual CD or the individual album from back in the day, you have access to probably another 60% of the material created by these artists, which is now forsaken and in some frigging purgatory for music. And sometimes I think they are the better tracks on some of those records. They could be longer. They could have been longer, sort of jam-oriented and edited for the new release or whatever. But they're gone unless you have that vinyl or unless you have that CD. And that's why I still have all my records and most of my CDs, which I've now uploaded to a digital format. Because I think it's, and people will call me, Don Was, Bonnie, other people I work with will say, hey, do you have this? We're looking for this song. We can't find it anywhere. So I keep it. And a few people I know, there's a great record shop in Ashland, Oregon called the Music Coop. They used to be in Petaluma, California. John Brennis, I was going to bring it up to Bob because I know he's one of, when I was in the Neville Brothers band back in the 70s, I introduced him to the Nevilles, and he became sort of their curator. Also sort of their, for when their kids would get into trouble in New Orleans, they would send them up to John to stay at his place up in Oregon because New Orleans just can be rough. Ashland, Oregon's a pretty mellow place, so you know the kids are going to be okay up there. So some of Aaron's kids, some of Charles's kids were actually, reared right up there, I think. And but it's important because there's still those shops out there and there's still knowledgeable people. I think in certain communities too, some of those shops, they turn into what the equivalent of what the local barbershop or the local general store would have been back in the day, but for music fans. People go in, they hang out, they exchange ideas. Oh, if you like this, have you heard this? Check this record out. Check this CD out. Check this bit of music out. That's so important to what we all do as musicians.
Do you still have any local record shops in your area, Hutch?
In Hawaii, there's a place called Requests.
Okay.
That's great. It's really it's vinyl and CDs. The Music Coop up in Petaluma, Ashland, Oregon now. I think Stereo Jacks in Cambridge, Mass. is. If you've never been there, Dino, I highly recommend going there. It's right outside of Harvard Square on Mass Ave.
You said the Coop we actually had the Coop in Boston too, didn't we?
Well, the Harvard Coop is where I bought a lot of my sort of world music and blues and R&B records when I was a kid. Also, they get the freshest stuff from England. So you could, if you saw someone at the Boston Tea Party, you could run over there and grab it. Another place that was in Harvard Square where the founder of Alembic, Rick Turner, worked, who made all Stanley's basses and wanted guitars for a lot of artists. He worked at a place called Briggs and Briggs, which was in Harvard Square. At the same time, he was Ian and Sylvia's guitar player, but that was his day job. And he started out there. He still talks about those days. Because I used to go in there. If you were looking for an obscure Howlin' Wolf record, or you're looking for something real rootsy, a lot of jazz, a lot of blues, a lot of the Folkways records, you'd go to Briggs and Briggs in Harvard Square. Okay. But there are still places out there, Freak Beat Music and Freak Beat Records in Sherman Oaks, California. Awesome store. I mean, those guys love what they do. It's sort of going back into that record nerd. What was the John Cusack movie? You know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
Record shop movie. Sort of, that still exists. And I think it's a really fantastic thing that it's coming back. I mean, I know Bonnie sells a lot of vinyl. A couple of things I played on years ago, which just re-released on vinyl. Who would have thought that 10 years ago, that vinyl is making the comeback that it is? Yeah. And as I said, I've been pulling out, I've had my records stored in the garage for years. I've been pulling out a lot of great stuff that I've forgotten about. Some of it's still sealed from back then.
Wow, that's cool.
Re-release,
and I found an old record BB autographed for me in the studio 35 years ago, and a record the Stones autographed for me on the Tattoo U tour.
Wow.
5 Stones on it in 81. I mean, which is probably worth some scratch right now, but
Yeah.
It's a good thing. It's great to have them. It's great to be able to pull them out and see them and appreciate the artwork and see who did what. And I think it's a good thing all around.
We do a thing here now at the Monoxelos.
It's yours.
On Sunday mornings, I inherited my mom and my dad's old Magnavox stereo. The big old tube.
I think I saw a picture of it actually. Yeah. I think maybe you sent me one or something.
And we every Sunday morning, man, for breakfast, we put on an album, and we make it a point to listen to both sides of the album rather than just playing separate songs. You can stack albums up.
Of course.
You know what I mean? So it flips.
Oh, of course.
No, that's
those
cool.
old ones you could do that.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
And me
I'm
and my
gonna send
wife.
you some vinyl. I'm gonna send you some vinyl, Dino.
Oh, please do.
Hey, Don, do you have a turntable?
I do. I do. Actually, I took advantage of our Yamaha employee discount, and that was the first thing I bought. Was a whole Yamaha system, and it sounds awesome.
Oh my God, I did that with JVC when they were sponsoring a tour back. We need to talk. Yes, I think I still love those old JVC speakers I have though. They're still in the living room. It's like
that's awesome. Yeah, I basically I'm such an '80s buff in terms of like artist influences. So went down that whole route, but now I'm like way back. I want to get all the Motown stuff. I want to get basically everything that you guys played on and just dig into that. I grew up with my parents had about every Springsteen record, America, like all the 60s, 70s folk stuff. So I grew up on that, and when I go back, I still try to throw those on and listen to them. Yeah. One day I'm just going to take them back with me, but because I know they don't use them anymore, but I haven't done that yet.
When I left home, there were certain records in 1970 to come to California because I wanted to make records. That's what I wanted to do. I couldn't do it. I didn't want to move to New York. I grew up in the Northeast. And so where do you go? San Francisco was happening. So I went to San Francisco, and I ended up meeting a number of cats, Bill Champlin and Mike Bloomfield, and these different people who sort of turned me on. I've been playing since I was 12 and made my first record when I was 13 years old, which Jeff Skunk Baxter produced, actually. And in Boston at Intermedia Studios. And it was, but I moved out there because I wanted to give myself the opportunity, at least, to make records. My mom gave me 2 years. She said, "You got 2 years." And I got a deal with Columbia. Clive Davis signed the band I was in and I was in Wally Heider's the next week, and meeting all these different cats, a lot of whom are still friends. And I was lucky, I was blessed, but I also had the talent. So aside from having the talent, you need to be in the right place at the right time. Yep. And I was able to do it, as I think probably similar situation with Jerry or Bob or anyone else. And but making records was the reason I did it. If I wanted to just gig, I could have stayed anywhere. You know, and I wanted to do more than that. I had aspirations, and that was it. And it was a good time, and I got to work in these great studios with these great artists that I was shocked that they hired me sometimes. Go, man, what are you really? And they go, "Man, I love the way you play." I'm going, "Wow, that's an amazing thing to me. Sure, I'll play." And, you do your best in those situations. And so then a few years after that, I was in the Nevilles, and I'm working with Alan Toussaint and Dr. John and, Fest and a lot of people who are legendary now who weren't really known outside of Louisiana or Texas at the time. And because the record business back then was regional. It wasn't like national as it became in the 80s and 90s. There was Sun in Memphis, there was Chess in Chicago, there was Atlantic in New York, where Jerry worked a lot with my old friend Cornell, who I miss very much. Cornell Dupree and his lovely wife Irma, I miss them both. So anyway, I'm sorry.
Jerry's back in the future now. He's got no delay, I think.
Are you delayed or are you here?
Are you hearing us real time, or are you delayed there?
I'm here.
Okay.
Yeah.
I believe I'm here. I'm hearing Hutch's story. He's really I've really been enjoying hearing his story. It's similar to mine in a lot of ways. But he's really I was more of a player than a listener, a creator than a listener. I stopped listening. I turned the radio off when I was 16 and went on with my own way. And it's funny how he wanted to make records. I never thought I was going to be good enough to even think about making records when I was his age. It took me a long time. It wasn't until I started playing the electric bass that I wanted to make records. I made my first recording on the upright bass when I was 12 years old, playing the All Bronx Orchestra, high school, All Bronx Junior High School Orchestra, where I met a lot of my friends that we're still friends today. But I had no idea of being, a professional musician or wanting to. I didn't have the drive that he had to make it. It's incredible. But I can see it's where he continued, and the listening was so important for him. And continual listening has been a great resource. I mean, even to this day, for me, listening to him, I've been inspired to, even listen more. I've never been a listener, and I've had the experience of being around greater musicians than myself compliment me on my playing, and these are people I grew up listening to. I would buy. You remember Harry Glukowski's Stringsville?
Right.
You should remember that, Hutch. Anyway,
I do. Yeah.
I work with Harry in the studio. He was the first violinist. He comes up to me and says how much he likes my playing. I mean, that just blew me away. I mean, this was like in the late 60s, early 60s, before I had done Aretha and BB and all that stuff. So we've had a lot of shared experiences because of our talent, our desire to help and to make music. What was your reason for wanting to make records, Hutch?
Well,
what was your reason?
I think because you were leaving something. You know what I mean, Jerry? It's like you were leaving a piece of you for people in the future to appreciate. That's like a painting or like a book. I mean, that's something physical that I think would, it's like music when we play it at a gig is, unless it's recorded, is transient. It just goes out there. People appreciate it in the moment with you, but it's not like they can listen to it down the road in 10, 20 years. How many times, like it happens to us now, because we're old enough, but people come up and they go, younger musicians and fans will come up and go, God, that record you did. And you'll go, wow, I forgot about that record. Man, it's like, I can't even remember that record. It was so long ago. It's 40, 50 years ago you did that piece of work. But now they come up and it could be something super popular, or it could be something that's really obscure that you yourself went, oh man, I forgot I made that record. I got to go back and find that and review and listen to it.
Sure.
Because I think that's how we learn. Also, that's why as musicians, because we're probably about 5 years in age apart, I think, Jerry and I. And I think when we're younger, especially when we listen to ourselves back, when you do a take in the studio and you've just done it and it's fresh and you listen to yourself back, then that's how you grow and that's how you learn. I think people now, younger players with home recording devices, they have that opportunity to grow in that way at home on a daily basis. But back then, the only way you did it was by going into a studio, whether you made that studio with great difficulty by linking tapes together in your home, or you like get hired for a legitimate session at a legitimate studio and go in. But when you hear yourself back, when you hear yourself back in those first few takes, you know what you're doing. And if you're prescient and that's your thing, then you can develop on that and make the take a better take, make the track a better track. And that's how you grow as a musician. And I think that's why people who have the privilege of recording, I think that's why sometimes, and even in this day, the more you record, the more you work with other people in that sense, the more you grow as a musician, no matter how old you are or how young you are.
Yeah.
And even this year during the pandemic, recording stuff from here, I mean, which ends up being released in some way, whether, and a record I just did, that Holly Lursky thing I played for Dino a few months ago, this English artist. I recorded my tracks here in Hawaii. I sent them to her in the UK. It's been released and BBC's playing it. But she released it on vinyl, and I think it's selling in record stores in Scotland and England. That's something we did during the pandemic.
That's cool.
Came out on vinyl this year. I mean, and people are digging it. And it's a song about California and Big Sur and Carmel, and it's an awesome thing that people are able to appreciate what you do, whether it's on vinyl or on radio, but the fact that it was recorded, records recording, of course, the same basically, and therefore it allows people to appreciate it everywhere for time immemorial, as long as there's people. So anyway, it's a cool thing.
Correct me if I'm wrong too, though. You know, in those days too, when a band or an artist wanted to record a record, it was you're listening to a collection of music of that specific time in their life.
Right, that moment.
Whereas now an artist puts out a single, then they put out another single, then they put out another single, and there's really not a cohesive collection there. Whereas,
it depends, and it still depends on the artist. I mean,
of course.
Jackson, Bonnie, like with Bob, Bonnie's got a record coming out next year. I think one of her best, with a couple of new musicians involved. Okay. But certain art and younger artists, a lot of them now, especially, still feel compelled to release things in an album format. I think it's basically with your modern country and your pop formats, it's all more single oriented. Okay. But a lot of artists, I think, of substance are still into releasing a package of songs. Even Metallica, a friend of mine's working on a Metallica record, same thing. I mean, it's like, they want to release a cohesive group of songs in a way.
Chapter.
And I think that's a snapshot of those artists' lives in that moment, which is what we're talking about. Singles were, of course, back in the day, culled from albums. So, I mean, 78s were independent, but once the 45 came about, that was really a piece of an album. It was a piece of that moment in time from those people. And that was for radio. Radio really requested that. But then in the late 60s, FM radio came out again, and you started playing albums in their entirety, or 12-minute songs by Cream or whoever, BB or whoever. I mean, that was when that stuff started coming out. So that was an amazing and exciting time. But a lot of artists, I think younger artists, especially now, are starting to gravitate towards releasing a cohesive group of songs in an album format. So that's a positive thing. I don't think it's a negative thing. I think the thing about releasing singles in the moment,
they want to tell a story.
The albums tell the story. The singles are about marketing and sales, basically. I mean, that's all they're really doing. The song itself may tell the story or it may not, but depending on the type of music. But I think an album, you're right, Dino, it's a snapshot in the life of that artist. And hopefully in other people's lives. Nick of Time, Bonnie's Nick of Time record, which after being around for 20 years, when we did that record, there were things in her life that really affected her deeply. And I think it swept the Grammys in 1990 because it affected other people in that same way, and still does today. I mean, that record still sells a lot. Sells a lot on vinyl. So it's 30 years old. So
there's so many experiences.
Capture the time.
Albums. I could tell you, you could name, a half a dozen albums that I could tell you where I was, who I was with the first time I heard that album. And that's, I mean, that's part of my life. Just it. So I know we're running short on time. I want to ask you guys a question though, and I'm asking everybody.
Okay.
I ask this at my clinics too. What sounds best, vinyl, CDs, or MP3s?
That's sort of a loaded question, I think. But
a clean piece of vinyl.
I think with a clean piece of vinyl through the right system can sound just the best, really great. A CD can also, through a great system, I think a lot, and lossless, of course. MP3 sound great, of course. I mean, they aren't even MP3s; they're FLAC files or whatever else. So it's a tough call. I mean, there's a lot more work with vinyl. You really have to want to listen to the music, and but I think vinyl. Seeing that I can A/B stuff at home in LA, I think I just there's something about vinyl that I being played through a great system, even a crappy system. I mean, I've got one of those little Crossley turntables for 78s. I'll put it on an old Erskine. Do you know who Erskine Hawkins was, Jerry? Tuxedo Junction. Do you remember that record? No? Are you there?
Oh, yeah.
Erskine Hawkins, Tuxedo Junction. Panama Francis was
Erskine Hawkins? Yeah.
I got to play with those cats.
Yes, I'm here.
I got to play with those cats when I was really young. It's one of the first records I ever bought. Some of the first records. The first record I remember buying as like an 11-year-old was the exciting Wilson Pickett in 1963. It was Land of a Thousand Dances, Midnight Hour. I mean, it was they were important, and I still have the record, and I put it on a few weeks ago, and it sounds as good today as it did.
Tommy Cogbill.
Tommy Cogbill, exactly. Who was one of my heroes, like yourself, and very special. Yeah, very special player, and he left us too early too. He passed away about 20 plus years ago. You know, too young. Very influential. Really a guitar player playing bass with a pick like Carol Kay, but amazing, funky Broadway.
He was 50. He's 50. Yeah.
He
was 50 when he passed, Jerry.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I
don't realize how he used a pick. It didn't sound like it at all.
Yeah, I know. He was one of those cats who, you know, it was amazing. Yeah, I know he used to pick a lot. My friends in Memphis have told me. I got to meet him once years and years ago.
He fooled me. He was my hero.
Wow. I think Carol, you know, you never know half the record she did that she was using.
He's incredible.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing about recording. You know, sometimes a pick gets a definition, a note definition.
Well, Joe Osborne, same thing too. You know.
What's that?
Joe Osborne, same thing.
Same thing.
Can't get with your fingers.
Yeah. I think
that makes a lot of sense. That the articulation that he had. You know, it's very.
You know, I mean, he was able to be super precise. But I'm not sure whether he used one all the time. But I know he was a guitar player, so therefore they tend to go that direction, unlike us.
That's true. I didn't think of it, but his taste exactly. He fought like a bass. He was able to, because he was a jazz player playing guitar. He played. I call it bebop bluegrass. When I met him, I could see where his influences came from. Where he actually really understand the role of the bass and played it appropriately, and didn't go guitaristic crazy with the pick when he used the pick. Because I couldn't tell. I never knew until this day that he used the pick. He fooled the hell out of me. I usually can tell the difference, but now that you think about it, the articulation, I would do the same thing with my fingers, you know, kind of play like the songs that he would cover. I have to cover his songs, and I get the same. I do it my way. I just do everything I did was my way, and I did very few people.
I think.
But I'm glad to hear your Paul Chambers story. That really touched me.
Yeah, it was interesting meeting his son, and I felt sad that his son had no real knowledge, and I hope his son went out. And you know, Paul had a bit of a drug issue, and I think his wife and he sort of were, you know, the
oh sure, I mean that's people.
Yeah, that's people.
It makes total sense. My kids can tell you the same. My kids can tell you the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. My kids can tell you the same thing his kid can tell you. I mean that's part of life. And to meet your hero, to meet their son, his son was a treasure. I met one of my heroes, Brett Mitchell. I couldn't. He was one of the first bases I encountered after Paul, and I met him in an elevator going to in my house, going to see Walter Booker. We were next door neighbors, and I had to express my gratitude to him. And I was so glad, like, to unload everything I couldn't give to everybody else on him. I mean, Red was something else. Yeah, he was the closest thing to Paul for me. And I had more of his, I had access to his music on a record. That's one of the records I have. Pacific Jazz Sampler with Jerry Mulligan, Tom Brookmeyer, Al Cohn, the whole thing. Yeah. So I was able to have a record that I actually owned and meet the person who made it. So I know that feeling that people have when they meet us, how they feel about us. It's really, it's nice to share the moment with them and appreciate it. And that's all you can really do, and be part of that journey, to be part of their life. And that's what we do as, I call ourselves actually baby makers as opposed to musicians, because we are creating not only, life in all forms, especially human life, because I've had, so many people say, after we heard you play the other night, we went out and had blah, 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 and here's our son. Okay, a year later, so this is a real thing, and I think it's one of the most important things that we do.
And some of us get personally involved in that sometimes.
Well, I see that we're out of time. Oh, yeah. I can tell you stories where I told my guitar player, hey, go listen to our last gig, and you can make that baby that you've been wanting to make. And that's exactly what happened.
Exactly. There you go.
I've seen it with my own eyes, because it was making me good. It was making me groove. So it's like, it works. It's a real thing.
It totally works. And you can.
But Hutch, man, when you come back to LA, man, let's hook up, man.
We'll go have some coffee or something, Jerry. We'll talk. We'll continue this conversation.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. It's like going to a library. Me too.
You're not the first one who said that, Ron. We'll do it. No, we will do it. I think I got your number anyway, so I'll call you.
Well, you guys all have each other's emails.
Good, beautiful.
So.
I think I got
for
his
sure.
info anyway. I know where to find this man.
Hey, listen.
And I'll find you.
I want to invite both of you. I want to invite both of you back on at some point individually, because we want to talk more about this. I know we didn't talk about gear or anything, which I totally appreciate. We talked about record experiences.
I'm going to talk to you about gear later.
Yeah, I know. I know I'm going to get a phone call later about talking about gear. But no, I mean, seriously, this is, I think about this, and I'll leave you guys with this thought. This is the reason why I started playing bass. I was a music fan long before I picked up an instrument. I think we're all in that same boat.
Yeah,
like
definitely.
we all started off listening to music.
Right.
I mean, my first record, you guys will laugh at me. My first record that I went out and bought was the soundtrack.
Rush.
No, it was the soundtrack to the original Rocky.
Nice.
I was so enamored with Bill Conti's arrangements.
Really?
Yeah, that was my first.
Admirable.
So, and that kind of inspired me to, I wanted to be a bass player after that. So that's cool. I want to talk more about this in future when we get together again, because this is the real stuff, man. We could talk about gear all day long and impedances and power and wattage and all that, but we want to talk about music,
Yeah.
So I don't want to talk about impedance. I'm sorry.
No, I don't want to.
Beautiful. Look forward to.
Not my thing. We have text for that, Dino. Jerry and I have people who take care of that stuff and fix our gear. And
me.
And you recommend it. Let me plug Greg Ranieri at Audio Rehab in LA.
Great repair shop, by the way. Absolutely.
Yes, totally.
Audio Rehab.
And another bass player. Yes, exactly. I ain't going to Audio Rehab. No, please send me to Audio Rehab.
I need some kind of audio rehab.
Exactly.
Listen, guys, thank you so much for joining in. Don't go away after we hang up here, but I want to thank everybody that commented in. A lot of great comments. It really wasn't anything that was asking questions per se. Just people were commenting in, just kind of bought my first Ampeg. But we're going to have more of this discussion for guys to chime in and ask these guys questions soon. So
the movie was High Fidelity. We got that.
Before I go, I got to show this to Dino because where is this here? See that?
Oh, wow.
Oh, come on.
Gifts from the office at Fenway. I said,
oh, dude.
That was one of my cool Christmas presents last year. Yes, sir. Yeah.
Oh, all right.
Okay, there you go. I know. We'll go to a game maybe in August if I make it back.
Okay. All right.
There's a Rangers series and an Orioles series. Now he's transitioned to baseball. So
yeah, right. In case you guys didn't know, Hutch and I are big Red Sox fans. So
yeah,
and I'm sure
didn't gather
Jerry,
that. Huh?
Is Jerry? Are you a baseball fan at all? Are you a Yankees fan?
I think.
Okay, and on that note,
I'm an NBA guy, man, NFL guy.
Oh, there you go. Okay,
Yeah.
Basketball and football. It's too slow for me, baseball. But I do appreciate the sport.
Are you?
I used to be. That was my bet. That's my team, the Giants. Yeah, don't talk about my poor Giants.
I knew it. I had to go there.
I like the Giants. That's my local team, but I live in California now, so I gotta go for the Rams when the Rams play.
Okay.
I remember Deacon Jones and all the cats when the Giants would play the Rams, so it's all good. It's action. I watch college football. It's action. Seeing the future come to light.
That's a good thing.
Beautiful thing to see development and pick out a star when they're young and see them. I know he's going to be good and see them that come to fruition. It's like a young musician like you, Hutch. I mean, to hear your story, man, it's truly, man, I'm blown away, man, that you had the talent and the vision and the ability to follow your dream.
I think we all did. I know you did it too. I mean, you growing up in
No, I didn't do that. It's everybody's dream is everybody's trip is different. Believe me, it's my trip is.
That's true.
I'm the last person who has wanted to be a musician. I had no talent, nothing to be.
Oh,
believe me, I had to work hard to.
You sure?
I'm telling you. I'm telling you. That's why I'm hearing I'm hearing your story, and I can only tell the truth. Yours was very seamless. Mine was a little rocky. Let's put it that way. But
okay,
all right.
We both made it, and I'm happy. I'm looking forward to having a cup of coffee with you.
We'll do it for sure. I'll look.
Or anything else. Bring back something from Maui.
I'll bring you some coffee from Maui. How's that? I'll bring you back some coffee. I'll bring you all coffee from Maui.
Yeah, I just love this delay, man. I'm talking. Okay. All right, brothers.
Okay,
I guess it's a wrap.
Yeah,
I guess it's a wrap. See you later, Jerry.
All right, take care.
I'll be back in a few weeks.
All right.
Cool.
Please do. Okay, I'll be here.
Is it a wrap?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm in. Yeah.